Hey guys, it's Will with Hong Kong Cinema Appreciation Society, and I am here today with a double movie recommendation video. So the deal with this is that I recently watched two Hong Kong films that I really loved, and they're both vampire movies. And I was originally going to do separate reviews, and then I thought, well, what the hell? They're both vampire movies, and I really liked both of them. It might be easier just to do one video and recommend two films, just talk about them a little bit, not waste too much of people's time, and get out of your hair, maybe kind of point you in a direction where you might be able to see them, because they're not, as far as I understand, they're not like super commonly available films. So before I get into that, I do want to say one thing, because I have a new addition to the stack behind me here, which I have not reviewed yet. It's going to be my next Blu-ray review, and it's this whitish gray one here, The Master with Jet Li. And I'm not finished watching all of the bonus features yet. I've watched most of them, but I just want to give a shout out to 88 Films for releasing this movie as they did. And I know that there are some people who have been a little bit hesitant to buy that one, because it has a little bit of like an embattled history of like, it was filmed in the 80s, it wasn't released until the 90s, and it has a bit of a reputation for not quite being as good, or for having, you know, X, Y, and Z problems. And I haven't seen this movie since, I think, like the mid-90s, whenever the US VHS version of it came out. I think I watched it when I was like in middle school, not really knowing who Jet Li was, honestly, at that point. And it was like an action movie. It looked kind of fun. It took place in LA. It's a great movie, and it's like this perfect mixture, and Choi Hark directed it. It's this perfect mixture of like a kind of almost a drama about immigrants and immigration and Chinese Americans versus people from Hong Kong, and like the cultural differences and things like that. And also like just this great, like a low budget, like B-level kind of like 80s like urban set kind of dystopian gangs action movie. Yuen Wah is in it, Crystal Kwok is in it. It's just an awesome movie. So that's not what I'm here to talk about. Two vampire movies for you, because Halloween is coming up, and if you're like me, you've been watching a lot of spooky horror type stuff recently. The first one, and both of these were recommended to me, I should also say, by Arna Venema, who's become a huge friend of the Hong Kong Cinema Appreciation Society family. And I actually have an interview with him, which might already be up on the page. It might be coming up soon. I haven't quite figured out what order we're going to put these videos out in, but we shot it last night, and it was amazing. We just couldn't stop talking about movies. It was so much fun. So look out for that. Vampire's Breakfast, released in 1987. And this is kind of an anomaly in Hong Kong horror and vampire films, in that it's a Western-style vampire. And it's actually a white guy. Simon Wilson is the name of the actor who played. And as far as I understand it, he's actually from Hong Kong, grew up there, but his parents are British. And so he plays like the kind of like Western-style vampire who is this white guy. And it has a really cool vibe to it. Like, it's spooky, it's creepy, it's very, very 80s. It's got that synthesizer music. And Kent Cheng, who you'll know, he was in Crime Story. I mean, he's been in like 1,000 movies. I think he was in Run and Kill, and you'll definitely recognize him. He's like a bigger guy, and he plays a reporter, and there's all these mysterious murders happening around the city, and he thinks that something is afoot, like the police are trying to cover it up, and maybe there's like a creature on the loose, and it might be like a ghost, or it might be like a vampire. And then one of the people who he's kind of interviewing for his stories, he ends up developing a crush on. She's played by Emily Chu, who you'll recognize from, I mean, she was in a lot of movies, I think in the 80s and maybe into the early 90s. Like, I think she was in Heart of Dragon with Jackie Chan and Sammo Hung and stuff like that. And so there's kind of like a romance developing there, but then the reporter is like really at odds with a police officer, who's played by Park Man Wong, who he was in like The Killer and stuff like that, but he also directed a movie that I really love. It's called Final Justice, which I've done a video about on this channel before, which is like a heroic bloodshed kind of movie starring Danny Lee and Stephen Chow. I think Stephen Chow was really young in that movie. That's a really good movie. And so, you know, you have this kind of really these interesting character relationships. You have this really interesting kind of mystery. You have this really spooky ambiance. And it honestly kind of reminded me a little bit of a Guillermo del Toro movie, because it's very character driven, and it has a lot of elements of like drama and mystery and romance, but it's also this really violent, like, it's a very violent movie, like a bloody movie, spooky, bloody, violent vampire movie that's super 80s. So I think I've said enough about that. It's called Vampire's Breakfast, and I loved that movie, and I really highly recommend it. That one was a little hard for me to find. I had to talk to a friend who's very good at sourcing movies, and he was able to find me a copy of it, but it's in Cantonese, so I had to go and find a separate English subtitle file and combine them. And I made my own movie, and I actually tried putting a part of it on YouTube to see if I could post some clips from it, and Fortune Star blocked it, but it was like a longer clip. So I'm gonna see if I can put shorter clips from it on there, and maybe they'll just copyright claim. They won't outright block me. So the next movie is called Sifu versus Vampire. We're hopping ahead like 30 years into the future here, and no pun intended with hopping vampires. This came out in 2014, and it was produced and written by Wong Jing. So if you know anything about Wong Jing, maybe you know what to expect from this. Yoon Biu is in it. He plays the lead, and I think Philip Ng is in it, and like a bunch of other people that you'll recognize from different, like Hong Kong, like more recent Hong Kong movies, if you've been watching, kind of keeping up with what's been coming out over the past like 10, 20 years. And this movie is completely insane. Like the first scene of this movie, I started texting my friends being like, I can't believe, and I'm sorry, I actually just took a shower. So it probably looks like I'm this like disgusting animal who can't stop sweating, but this is actually just like, it's like shower water that's like coming off my head and stuff. But I couldn't believe how insane this movie was. I was texting multiple friends being like, I have to tell you what I'm watching because I can't believe that it's real. There's a guy who's like a TV producer lying in a bed, receiving pleasure from a woman who becomes attached to a certain part of his anatomy and has been possessed by a demon, and they have to call this like Taoist guy who's played by Yoon Biu to come and exorcise the demon in the middle of the sex act. And from there it just gets more insane, and you're like, what is happening? So it's like a vile like sex comedy / vampire movie, and it's actually pretty good. Like as a vampire movie, I was really entertained because I really love vampire movies. I'm kind of like, I'm not the world's biggest horror fan. It's some stuff like it's too extreme and it makes me feel kind of like uncomfortable. It's like, ugh. Like I've been kind of hesitant to see some of those really famous Anthony Wong films like The Untold Story because it just makes my stomach churn, like hearing what it's about, let alone watching it. But I really like vampire movies, and so like going all the way back to the Bela Lugosi Dracula in the Spanish language Universal Monsters version of Dracula, and I love Bram Stoker's Dracula, the Coppola movie, like Underworld, like all that stuff. And so this movie was like a really fun, kind of gory, kind of silly vampire movie, but at the same time this just like ridiculous sex comedy. Like one of the guys is in love with a ghost. And there's all these like one of the ongoing jokes of the movie is that the TV station that this guy owns. Basically the plot is that Yoon Biu ends up being asked to move a body from one gravesite to another, but the body is a vampire. So they need like his kind of like spiritual and magical powers to move the vampire without it like awakening and killing all his people and stuff like that, right? And he ends up he's kind of butts heads with the grandson of the body of the guy they're moving, and that guy runs a TV station. And so you have like all these like aspiring actors and actresses who are like like very pretty but very bad at their jobs, and they're like like sucking up to this guy and like getting involved in the vampire stuff, and like it's very silly, it's very bonkers, it's very horny, and it's a really fun movie. And that whole movie is on YouTube with English subs. So just go to the search bar on YouTube and type in Sifu, which is Sifu, versus Vampire, and you will find it. So my name is Will. This has been Hong Kong Cinema Appreciation Society, Vampire's Breakfast, and Sifu versus Vampire, two great Hong Kong vampire horror films. Highly recommended for Halloween season if you're getting into that whole like hashtag Asian Shocktober thing. Shout out to Eastern Movie Drifter. If you're not following him on Instagram, make sure you go check him out. He does something every October called Asian Shocktober, where he highlights tons of Asian horror films from all over Asia. So you have like the Hong Kong stuff, the Korean, South Korean stuff, Japanese stuff, like, and more like beyond that too. So thanks for watching. Subscribe if you're not already subscribed. That would be a huge help. Thank you so much. It really does help the channel, and we'll see you next time.